I'm Dr. Mark Hatala, and I want to welcome you to my office. I'm a cognitive scientist who studies time travel by replicating days from the past, in this case, December 7th, 1972. So all the media that someone would be exposed to from a particular day, from morning newspapers through late night television and everything in between. Now, today's video is a real treat because today the past speaks. So my research team and I did is we interviewed Dr. Joel Roache, who wrote an article in Ms. Magazine about what it was like to be a house husband in 1972. And so we interviewed him 50 years later to see what his insights were and what his experience was like. So one of the questions that we had, we can start it with this one, is what was the feminist movement and the women's movement like in the late 1960s when he was married and living in Madison, Wisconsin?
But I hardly even heard of the women's movement before I got to Madison. Okay, and that was in 1968. You would have thought I would have by that time, but I don't remember focusing on that at all before I got to Madison. And in that environment, not being a feminist would get you in trouble.
We followed this up with a question about what people knew about the women's movement and how he thinks it's changed during his lifetime.
Feminism is now taken for granted. It was a novelty in the 60s. It was something new. People didn't really know anything about it. Now everybody's pretty clear about what's going on. And of course, it's bigger now. And so I think there's a general acceptance of the basic principle or the basic premises of the movement, which did not exist at that time. Remember, in the 60s, it was only a few years from the 50s, from Leave It to Beaver and Father Knows Best and all that. I grew up in such a family. So that is no longer the norm, is it? I mean, the impact of feminism and the ripple effect of feminism in the media, in just the shows you see on TV and the roles the women play. Lately, by lately I mean in the last few years, for instance, I see a lot of programs where women can fight just as well as men. I mean, they just, they clench their fists and knock you in the jaw just like a man does. I'm not sure that's an incredibly good thing, but at least it is a symptom of equality.
We also asked Dr. Roache how the article that he wrote differed from the one that was published. It was not only longer, but he and his wife had hired someone to help with the children. And the editor at Ms. Magazine had a very interesting comment about that.
It had another, 2 or 3 pages talking about my wife finally did get a paying job. And so we hired someone to take care of the kids. And it occurred to me at the time that she was making a lot less than my wife was, and that the system is such that in order for my wife not to be exploited, we had to exploit her. That as I introduced a class element into the discourse, Ruth told me that one of the editors there, when this topic came up, said, "Oh, well, they can just pay her more." Well, if they pay her more, then my wife isn't getting any money. So, I mean, so there was a tendency in MS, and I haven't seen any evidence that it's changed to, well, the women's movement has been generally a middle-class movement. The only time women get into working class, I mean, women come up in a working class context is within unions. And now at this point, I have the impression, I don't really know that much, but I have the impression that women are speaking out and standing up more in unions. You get working class women together and you got something going.
We followed up his experience in Madison, Wisconsin by asking about other activities that he was involved in there.
And as I said once again, the atmosphere in Madison at that time encouraged all that. And I became quite enthusiastic. Started and ran several men's consciousness raising groups, where we both, bitched about what was going on and talked about how we could be supportive of what was going on. I guess in some cases, if we could be supportive.
In terms of the ramifications of a house husband article, we also asked Dr. Roache about who contacted him after the article came out and what that was all about.
I got called by Time magazine, and they only had one. The woman only had one question, which were my wife and I still married? And when I said we were, she said okay and hung up. She was looking for a story about how our marriage had gone to hell around us. Now our marriage did go to hell about 10 years later, but it didn't go to hell then.
I hope you've enjoyed our interview with Dr. Joel Roache, the house husband from 1972, who's talking to us now. I'll put a link to the original article below. And while you're at Time Travel Simplified, why not become a time traveler and buy my book? Final Apollo Mission, December 7th, 1972. It's guaranteed. Our motto is, it's time travel or it's free. If you would like to support my research further, I'll put a link to my Patreon account below. I would ask you to like and subscribe, and otherwise, have a great day.